Hi, my name is Michael Cottmeyer, and I'm the Vice President of Pillar Technologies. In our little chat, we talked about Agile in the enterprise, mainly how to bring agility into the enterprise. And we went through, it's actually back here. We went through asking, what's usually the issues, and we had the usual suspects, management buy-in, how to get stuff that's agile, working with stuff that's not agile, etc. But we were having a lot of problems kind of coalescing into the same conversation because there's a whole bunch of us and we're all at different levels. So at the end we ended up with, okay, we really have three questions. Why don't people even want to consider agile? How do you deal with that? What about people who, okay, we want to consider it, how do we get started? And finally, okay, we started. How do we make sure it actually works? And then at the end we decided, okay, let's focus on this because this, in a way, touches upon the previous two. Because as you, that's the whole point, is you start small, you start growing, and that's where the enterprise part comes in because you basically have to scale it. And going through it, essentially, we found that the crux of the problem is that usually companies and organizations are structured in these silos, development organization, QA, marketing, so on and so forth. But agile teams really want to work across the different silos. So in a single team, you want to have some developers, some QA, some documentation, some training, some marketing, right? What happens when in the middle of your iteration, the QA manager pulls out your QA guy because there's a bug somewhere and all of a sudden you lost a team member in the middle of your iteration? Is that acceptable? Can you really work under that environment? And there were some discussions about that, and some people said, well, that's the reality. Other people said, well, no, that's a deal breaker. Either you're in or you're out, right? So again, different people will have to deal with it different ways. Some of the suggestions were, for example, you could, let's say you have 7 people. There's that guy that sometimes goes away. So then you plan for 6.5 people. And since everybody can do anything, we all know that if we lose John, well, somebody's going to have to fill in for John, and some story isn't going to get delivered, and that's the cost of that. But what Agile does allow you to do is it's very transparent. So when it's the end of the iteration, and even before the end of the iteration, since you have your burn down and you have your daily scrum, etc., you can start telling your product owner, hey, we just lost a guy. We're not going to be able to get the 10 things we promised you. We're only going to be able to give you 9 or 8. But you can tell today, not when you're releasing. So that seemed to be kind of what we sort of agreed that was probably a good idea to do. This is where we were talking about, specializing generalists, that idea. If you put that into Google, it'll take you straight into some very good talks about the concept of generalizing specialists, which is sort of what we say we want to have inside of Scrum teams. And then at the end, we just went over some example organizations and how they might run within an agile environment. This was one example where you have multiple teams. Each team contributes a member to the integration team, which sort of acts as the Scrum of Scrums. And my time is done.
You can finish that thought.
Okay. So the Scrum of Scrums has one member from each one of the teams, and they're acting as chickens, so they don't necessarily get stuff to do in the backlog. They still have members who are full-time members who do get items in the backlog, and it has a product owner who's usually the product owner for the overall product. So as these guys contribute functionality or components or however you want to call it, depending on your architecture, these are the guys who are actually delivering product, things that people pay money for so they can actually do something. Along with that, there's a product owner cloud. So each one of these teams has a product owner. Along with that product owner, they meet regularly to make sure that the full backlog, because we all run on one backlog, that backlog is properly estimated and prioritized, etc. And along with that, we have another meeting that happens regularly, and this we found that just helps. It's 1 hour a week, but it really, you gain a lot of efficiency out of that, where you have all the Scrum Masters, all the product owners, some architects, and whoever else is necessary. QA management, etc., so that everybody knows kind of the big picture of what's going on. Meanwhile, everybody who's reporting somewhere else always brings back to the teams, and that's how you keep the teams focused on what they need to do, while at the same time keeping the ship going to the same direction, everybody. Thank you very much. This has been Mike Cottmeyer.